And I'd now like to welcome back to the stage, we saw her yesterday, the wonderful Star Jones, host and judge of Fox's Divorce Court, Fox Television Studios, and chair of the US Commission for Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad, and the panelists for this session, A Healthy Operating System, the wonderful Star Jones. Oh, lovely. Mwah. Mwah.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Yes, indeed. Oh, you learned from yesterday. We must greet each other. Hello, hello, indeed. Oh, I'm so honored today to get the opportunity to talk to a powerhouse panel of CEOs. Werner Baumann is CEO of Bayer AG. Nancy Brown is CEO of the American Heart Association. And Thomas Buberl is CEO of AXA. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Well, you all don't want to hear me talk. I want to make sure I jump right in today. One thing we know for certain is that the global pandemic forced employee health care to the front burner of conversations in every single corporation. Most companies now are, in addition to the traditional health benefits, we're talking major medical and dental and vision that we all want to get when we work for a company. A lot of companies have really started looking at employees' overall well-being. Health and wellness is now a part of a company's culture if the company is smart. And so what we thought we would do is do a little table setting on how that actually operates in the corporations around the world. I'll start with Werner and ask you to table set for us in this way. The stated vision of Bayer is health for all, hunger for none. That is a statement in and of itself. I know that you and Bayer believe that health for all starts with your employees' own health and well-being. So how have you embedded that into the organization's culture? Because that is what is necessary for it to really work.
Yeah, thanks for the question. First of all, on health for all and hunger for none, let me share a brief anecdote with how this vision came about. We were discussing in the board that we need something that people can really relate to in terms of what the company is doing, and then health for all and hunger for none came about. And our head of the pharma division was adamant about it, and then the CFO asked, can we really be credible with health for all? We will never achieve that vision, which of course is a true statement. And then our pharma had said, hey, if I now shoot for a target of 100,000 people that I want to make healthy, do you think I'm going to stop at 100,001? Yeah, it needs to be that level of ambition and bold statement that moves an organization. Now, being credible to our constituencies is impossible if we don't have alignment, and also do the same inside of the company. And I would love to tell you that the current board has moved the needle in terms of the company culture, but truth to be told, we have been doing this for the last, I don't know, more than 100 years. Yeah? So looking after our employees is deeply ingrained in the company culture. It's of course more prevalent and more visible now, but it's always been there. A good example for that is when the pandemic came around, and the massive threats that people felt to the health, not only of themselves, but also to their families. And it was actually that what you want to have in the organization is that grassroots movement where people don't wait for hierarchy to demand or request something. Our people were all over the place in making sure that our people's families had access to masks. You remember that was a very, very tight issue. And we procured and provided masks to all of our employees and their families in order to make sure that they were protected. Same thing holds true for some of the bigger programs. Yeah, so the health and well-being is very, very important across the world. We of course have established programs similar to other companies like yours, for example, for sure, Thomas. With health and well-being, Be Well at Bear, the House of Health that have more than 100,000 of our people internally accessed by now in order to get advice. Leaders get training, and then as we're also a very important women's health company, female health, menstrual health, menopause management has dedicated programs, and we're also looking at, actually as we speak, at a program that helps menopausal women in their workday so that we can support them better. So that's essentially what we're doing.
Absolutely, and what I hear is buy-in from the C-suite, from the leadership, that it is actually from the leadership that these initiatives are coming, and that is absolutely imperative in a corporate culture, so that the company feels that the boss agrees with this new policy. So thank you so very much. Nancy, as CEO of American Heart Association, you and I both know heart disease is the #1 killer worldwide and stroke ranked second globally. Even when those conditions don't result in death or serious diminished quality of life or disability, they do cause some disability and diminished quality of life, at least in the perception of others. So as the AHA's national volunteer, I know that nearly for 100 years, we've been fighting heart disease and stroke and helping the families and communities thrive. Tell me the strategies that the AHA are actually employing to get corporations to buy into this absolute imperative when it comes to health.
Thank you, Star. To table set just a minute, over 330 billion people in this world go to work every day. And these people work in organizations, and some people go to work to earn a paycheck. But for many people, work is much more meaningful than that. And we have always believed at the American Heart Association that every person deserves an equal opportunity for health and well-being. And if you think about the amount of time people spend in companies, organizations, factories, wherever people might work, to create the culture that people feel engaged and inspired requires health and healthcare to be a CEO issue, not an HR issue. And we have always believed that at the AHA, and we've worked tirelessly to engage global CEOs in this movement for health equity for all. I can tell you in my own organization where I employ people, I can see the level of engagement blossom when people feel cared for, respected, and when we understand as CEOs that there are many things people bring to work with them every day, and allowing people not only to be their authentic self, but to understand and respect that people have both physical health issues and mental health issues really requires a mindset, and it requires creating cultures in our companies where we are providing tools and resources for people to be able to address those issues. So at the American Heart Association, we do just that for companies around the world. We listen to employees and what they want, and we listen to employers and what they have, and we really try to set a model of tools and resources for employers, but it all starts with the CEO's engagement and the commitment of the C-suite that health and well-being is a strategic imperative for our companies in this world to be successful.
That is definitely for a hand clap. I heard you say it's a CEO issue, not an HR issue. This seems to be a continuing theme, which of course brings me to Thomas. We've talked about these issues before, as a matter of fact, a year ago. But you and AXA, in keeping with what we're saying, has made occupational health a double priority, both as a company with nearly 150,000 employees, but also as a health insurance provider. So that's a unique position to have both roles. So tell me how you've embedded employee health and well-being into your organization's culture, and then help other companies then address these same issues.
So we are very convinced that employee well-being is one of the key areas for people to feel well and to perform. And I can fully only agree, it has to start with the CEO. And so, for example, I try and practice that as well. I was in Japan the other day. On day number 1, we went running together with the teams around the Emperor's Palace. On day number 2, we went and did meditation in the temple. And I think it's important to show that it's important for you, because you want it for your employees. And in our DNA, if you go back in the history, you find that AXA has always been very caring. I saw this morning the founder of AXA again for breakfast, and we spoke about it. And he also told to me, look, at the very beginning, employees need to be happy at work. If they're happy at work, everything else turns into positive. And so making sure that we have, and certainly COVID has helped us. I think COVID is probably the biggest accelerator when it comes to health. I was also responsible for the health business at AXA previously to my job, and I was always frustrated that people would spend more money in maintaining their car than maintaining their body. And so the question for me was always, how could we make sure that we offer the maximum we can, be it around telemedicine services for our employees, be it around regular checkups, be it also around, and we were the first ones at the time, around implementing a parenting policy globally. So making sure that you have visible signs that you care for your employees, not only in your tools, but also in the daily management. If you look today how our agendas are structured, much less around rigorous business reviews, much more around being emotional, listening, caring. So this is the part where, of the internal way of dealing with the topic around health. Because if you want to sell health insurance, you need to also start with family and friends first. We are one of the largest health insurer, and again, COVID has probably given us one of a great business opportunity, in particular around employee benefits. So companies care much more today around employee well-being. Employee well-being has become a retention and performance tool, and what we see today is really a renaissance, not only in terms of health insurance per se, but health insurance plus services to help to accompany employees and to make sure they live happy and healthily within the company and outside. Because we must not forget, COVID was being seen as a major crisis. We live today in an environment in which we have several COVIDs in one moment. Geopolitical crisis, economic crisis, climate crisis, and the list goes on and on and on.
The 100%, and Thomas, what you've said is, in addition to what you're doing internally, your example is also an external example, so that the companies that you supply the insurance for see that it can work. So I want to ask, and I'll start with Werner on this one, what are the long-term ramifications for us not doing this, for failure to make employee health and well-being a part of the work environment? Because we've now heard the good things. What happens if you don't do it?
Well, if you don't do it, we get the opposite of good, which is bad. Yeah? Very simply speaking. I think it will start with people feeling uneasy about what the role of the leaders in the company is if they don't look after their people. Our people are our main asset. We are a people company. Mm-hmm. And without our people, nothing ever happens. So first, second, and third principle in the company and priority in the company is make sure, similar to what you said, Thomas, that our people feel at ease, that they feel they're being looked after, and that they, in particular, see and experience that they are supported when the going gets tougher. Maybe an individual case, you have somebody who falls victim of a disease, and then it becomes, leadership really becomes a one-on-one issue. It means that if one of my direct reports has a health issue or a stress issue, psychological stress, it's very much up to me to see what I can do in order to help that colleague. It actually happened to me yesterday evening, where one of my direct reports called me and said that he has to go for an emergency intervention next week. And the next thing that I do, and I guess most of you here would do, is to ask, what can I do for you? Is there anything that I can do for you, for your family? Is there anything that I can help you with when it comes to getting the right medical treatment? Is it anything that we can do as you're a fairly significant pharma company, spotting the right place where you get your treatment and so on? And that is what our people expect, and we have to deliver. So in the absence of it, people disengage. If people disengage, people will not be able to do the job the way we would like to do them to do the job, and they will not be able to serve their constituencies, which in turn are, again, your medical professionals, farmers around the world who look after our well-being at scale when it comes to health for all and hunger for none.
Weigh in, Nancy, because I can see you shaking your head. You've seen this come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Werner's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if employees are facing physical or mental health challenges, and do not feel supported in their organization, either by a robust set of employee benefits that are affordable and accessible and understandable to every person in the company, you will not have engagement. Employees will not bring their best self to work every day if they are facing other challenges personally or with their family. And this really is a culture. We must create a culture where every employee believes that their health matters to the person at the top of the company. That has to be the way it is. Take for an example, a person with type 2 diabetes or hypertension. Drastically, people do have strokes and heart attacks. We don't want that to happen. But everyday health challenges with your weight, challenges with trying to quit tobacco, challenges with any number of things, mental health and well-being, COVID, long COVID, all of these things are in the hands of employees who walk in our doors every single day. So making sure that we support them culturally, but also provide the benefits that allow our employees to thrive. And that's really important. And this issue of affordability and understandability matters as well. As 3 CEOs sitting here, we count on the people in our organizations to make sure that everyone knows and understands. But if you really dig deep into the layers, issues around financial literacy, understanding, I'll just say I had to have an MRI on my hip not too long ago after a sports injury, and my out-of-pocket costs, which I can afford, was over $1,000. And the first thing I thought of wasn't the $1,000 for me. I picked up the phone and called my head of HR when I came back. I said, how are we helping our people who, all of our employees earn a living wage, but how are we helping people who may be at a lower,
100%.
income level afford this? This isn't without sacrifice, and we don't want our employees having to decide whether to get their prescriptions filled or how they'll pay for their next flat tire.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because our vice president in the United States, Kamala Harris, has said that a $400 unexpected expense can devastate a family. And that's a real life example. We're blessed to be able to afford an out-of-pocket of $1,000, but if someone had to do $400 in the middle of their month when they didn't count on it, that could really devastate a family's budget for that month, which impacts on the budget going forward. Thomas, this is what you do every single day. Take off your hat of being the CEO of just an organization, but also the CEO of an organization that provides that robust benefit package. I want to ask you, make the business case so that people understand the bottom line is this is good business. It makes sense.
Well, it makes first sense for the individual.
Yes.
The business comes afterwards. If you go in with a business proposition and find the aim for the individual, it doesn't work. And so for me, what's important is when you look at the case of prevention and well-being relative to, I wouldn't even say health cost, but experience of your own life. Because when you look what customers care least about, they care least about the fact that they're being reimbursed. They care most about the fact, and what Werner says, you know, we see every day, that if something happens, somebody is there to help. Be it to be on his or her side, be it to find the right doctor quickly, and so on. And I think there is many assets today that we have that we are starting to offer to our customers, but we could go much further. One thing I think is important when we talk a lot about employee well-being, we also need to make sure we create regular awareness around it. And not only from the occasional chat at the coffee machine, if that still exists today, but also to ask our employees to have a pulse survey. What is going on, how do they feel, and also where do you see changes? And so, for example, we do this on a regular basis and look very carefully where are areas and zones of difficulty. We just addressed a topic, and Nancy did it, which is around what are we doing for the people that are very close to, I would say, a very difficult financial event in life or can't even afford health insurance. And I think that is for me one area in which we certainly want to go in the next step further, to say, look, it's difficult today for many of these people to afford the health insurance product, to afford the intervention or the X-ray. How can we design products and proposition that they can afford it? Because what you see certainly in emerging markets is that insurance is a mechanism to smooth people's life and also to prevent against poverty. And financial health is very highly correlated with bodily health.
Star, can I just add on to that one moment? I think this issue of listening to what people want really matters. You know, at the AHA, at American Heart Association, we have 10 employee resource groups. You know, as an example, during the pandemic, we started a group called Parents with Heart. Why did we start this group? Because 84% of the employees of the American Heart Association are women. Do you hear that, ladies? 84% women. Yes. And we listened to what, yes, absolutely. And we listened to what really mattered to our female employees during the pandemic, but really what matters to them always. And so enhancing benefits to be far beyond, you know, making sure that people have access to high quality health care, affordable medicines, all the things, you know, telehealth for mental health and well-being, but issues of child care benefits and fertility benefits and extended parental leave for all employees. You know, these are the things that matter to our workforces. And so it is really, really important that this is a grassroots movement, yes, not just, you know, the grassroots meets the CEO.
I love that. Werner, I'm watching you shake your head in this regard because your employees do give you feedback, and that is what has helped to inform this program that you introduced for us. How has listening to your employees helped move Bayer forward in the kinds of services you want to provide?
Well, first of all, we have you know, something very similar to what you mentioned, Nancy. We also have employee resource groups that help, groups and constituencies that share, you know, a number of topics, raised their voice and made themselves heard, which in turn does of course influence company policy, yeah, and also influences how we take better care of our people. So that is one thing. The other thing is that you know, for me in my role, it's actually very important to be here to listen to you all, but also to our people in the countries. And to see what is being done, yeah, because these examples are very, very powerful, yes, and help me then talk about these examples when I travel elsewhere. It was a great visit I paid to Argentina a couple of months ago, where we run one of the largest seed processing facilities worldwide, quote unquote, in the middle of nowhere in a rural environment. And you will not be surprised that, similar to what you said, Nancy, in this case, it was almost exclusively men who were employed in that facility. And now leadership comes into play. The head of the plant said, it's actually not good how we are operating the plant. We are lacking an element of diversity that we should have. And at the same time, it linked up very, very well with what some of these communities needed. Yeah? So small villages around where women who had divorced from their husbands raising kids were actually really challenged in making a day. So we brought a number of these women into the company and ran them through some training early on. So this program has been going on for a number of years now. And I met with two really impressive ladies when I was there who had entered into the canteen and are now shift supervisors. Yeah? So they not only had they made their way up in our organization and have significantly contributed to that plant being a better place to work, they also have something that is very important, and that is higher self-esteem, the ability to actually also make a living on their own for their families. And that's actually a great example that I use when I travel other places, saying, these things start with the leadership on the ground making the right decisions based on what they see and what they hear, and that's just the same with me.
I am so impressed. I usually get to ask, well, where are some of the best practices that you have seen put into place? And you all have just outlined the best practices that are being put into place. In our last few moments together, we here at the Women's Forum always want to have some takeaway. We always are looking for an action item. So I'm going to ask each one of you if you could give us one key action or recommendation that our audience can literally take away and, if possible, implement in their own organizations. Because the change is going to be organic. You all say that you have to have the CEO buy-in, the C-suite buy-in, but I get the sense that it is so employee and human being driven. Thomas, will you start for us? What's my takeaway?
Take 30 minutes for yourself every day.
I love that. Nancy, what's the takeaway?
Love that. And I would say take 30 minutes for yourself and know your numbers, be aware of your own health and well-being. But I would say, one of the most important things any of us as individuals can do is be advocates for our fellow workers and employees. Let's make sure the cultures of our companies and our organizations support the full health and well-being of people. And that starts with the CEO, but it is a cultural thing that each of us can impact.
And Werner.
Whatever you want to see done in your environment, make it an I issue. Don't simply say, I support, make it an I issue and lead by example. That makes a difference because it lends you big credibility.
It's rare to have the opportunity to talk to CEOs about what will move the needle forward. And one of the things that we've all been sort of identifying is the health inequities that really came to fruition during the global pandemic. It's not that they were not there before, it just shined a very shiny light. Can you share with me, and I'll start with you, Werner, and come back this way, what did you learn coming out of the global pandemic that has informed the way you operate now?
If I've learned one thing, that is that if you're left on your own, you start to develop strange habits. Which means Yeah, there's an element of social control that is also given with, let's say, social organisms like our companies, where you want to be surrounded by colleagues, yeah, to stay, let's say, a sociable human being, rather than being the one, yeah, that shows up on the screen, yeah, every once and then. Yeah.
Yes. Nancy, what did you?
I'd love to get rid of those screens forever. I keep saying, can't we go back to conference calls,
Yes.
instead of all the Zoomings? I think for me, it's not as much of what I learned, it's what was put as an exclamation point on the entire reason the American Heart Association exists, and that is that people who have underlying health conditions during the pandemic were more likely to be more sick or to die, especially in the earlier pre-vaccination days. And so focusing back on prevention and the health and well-being of every person really matters, because health is now on everyone's mind. How do we use this moment to, as individuals and as companies, to make sure health stays on people's mind?
I love that. And Thomas, you get the final word.
I learned two things. One personal one: the less you structure, the less you prepare a conversation, the more you get out of it. And a second one, we spoke a lot about best practices, what works well, but we have not spoken about what we have not cracked yet. And one thing that really I think we have not cracked yet, but the cracks appeared much more during COVID, is the question around mental health. Nancy, you mentioned it twice. But when I look today, are we capable to identify and to address it? Not yet, and not sufficiently. And I think this is an area where we need to do much more.
I have to tell you, to be able to have these minds and this commitment really bodes well for organizations and putting health and wellness on the front burner. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking our panel today. Really magnificent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Star, and to your esteemed panel. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts.